So from now on, the meeting would be recorded. And thank you so much for joining. For those who were not with us in our last series, briefly outlining what the webinar series is all about. Over the course of 3 sessions, we are diving deep into different topics related to climate and disaster risk finance and insurance, or CDRFI for short. In the first webinar, we introduced the foundational concepts and principles of CDRFI. We also explored various instruments and emphasized on the importance of proper and gender-sensitive approaches. Today in our second session, we will focus on how CDRFI is integrated into national policies and practices. We will also look at how civil society can engage at an entry point in developing and implementing these frameworks. And in the final session, we will discuss on the benefits and challenges countries might face implementing CDRFI programs, including Pakistan. Now to give a sense of how these sessions are structured, here is a quick overview. The webinars consist of 3 sessions featuring different guest speakers. We already had our first sessions last month, and today we have our second session. We encourage participants to ask questions anytime. You can post the questions in chat. Our speakers will try to answer the questions after their presentations, but we will also have a dedicated question and answer session at the end of the session for detailed discussion as well. And again, participants who attend at least 2 webinars will have the opportunity to receive a certificate of participation from UNU MCII. For this, we request that you fill out the survey, which I will be sharing at the end of the session. And next, we have the agenda for today's session. And today we are going deeper into the CDRFI topic, focusing on how CDRFI is integrated into national policies and initiatives. And here is the objectives of today's webinar to see what we aim to cover. The first session involves analyzing key actors and main structure in global CDRFI architecture, including CVF20 initiatives, Global Shield Against Climate Risk, and V20 Climate Prosperity Plan for Pakistan. And in the second session, we will involve to contextualize CDRFI in broader policy processes and national level, at the national level, and defining the key elements of CDRFI into national policy processes. Let me quickly acknowledge our speaker for today's session. I'm pleased to introduce Hamza Ali Haroon, joining us from CVF and V20 Finance Ministers. Next, we have Alexandra Mead and Serin O as well, joining us from UNU MCII. We get to hear more from the speakers later, as well as we dive into the main sessions. Before we dive in detail, I would like to start with the current landscape of the disasters. In 2023, Asia Pacific saw about $65 billion in economic losses, mostly from floods and droughts, presenting the extent of livelihoods disrupted, supply chain broken, and national budgets strained. Pakistan's 2022 monsoon is a stark example, with 33 million people affected, over 15 billion losses, and reconstruction need of more than 16 billion, presenting the cost of damage and scale of recovery required to the community. And when we look at the bigger picture, adaptation and financing in Asian country needs somewhere between 102 and 431 billion dollars. Yet between 2021 and 2022, only 34 billion was committed, which is a huge gap, and it leaves households, governments, and entire economies exposed to the impacts of climate change. which brings us to the need of effective disaster risk management that goes beyond emergency response. It is also about strong governance framework, clear roles, and coordination across sectors and levels of government. And here is where CDRFI plays a critical role. We have sorry, we have some participants joining. Yes, so to continue, I would like to present how CDRFI can be integrated into different stages, and to see where CDRFI fits in. It is helpful to look at the integrated disaster risk management cycle, since finance has a role to play in every stage of and not just after the damage is done. Yeah, sorry, I think, yeah. The ICRM cycle is a framing tool developed by UNUMCII and GIZ in 27, which with an objective to bridge from general climate risk thinking to where CDRFI sits. The disaster risk management cycle is a continuous loop starting from prevention, including prevention, preparedness, response, and recovery, each one connected to the next. Next is prevention, which is about reducing climate risk before the impact happen. Government can use CDRFI data for quantifying loss and damage of climate hazards and understanding how different risks are affecting households, communities, businesses, and governments. Here, investing in prevention, such as early warning system, flood defenses, the expected losses and disasters from the disaster decreases. And not all risk can be prevented, and therefore some of the risk can be transferred. In the second stage, government can elaborate their CDRFI strategies based on risk layering approach, which we talked about in our first session as well. And so a complementary set of approaches are available to cover risk at different scenarios, and different instruments are also available. The Global Shield instrument, such as Global Shield, can also be accessed early enough, which ensures that countries are not left without slow-moving budget allocation. We dive deep into this topic in our main session later. Second, we have preparedness, where CDRFI shines as a form of financial foresight, and this is not just a reaction. When early warning systems are paired with pre-arranged finance, whether through sovereign risk pools, risk response capacities, before the disasters strike. For instance, early warning system can give signals and CDRFI tools to CDRFI tools, and when thresholds are reached, disbursement can happen automatically, removing bureaucratic delays. Next, we have response, which is about immediate action when disasters strike, providing relief, shelter, medical care. With CDRFI, this means rapid liquidity through pre-negotiated payouts, ensuring help arrives without waiting for slow budget reallocations. And finally, we have the recovery, which is about rebuilding lives and economies. Here, it is also important to integrate Build Back Better principles, which are just not about replacing what is lost, but also improving the resilience. For instance, buildings that are constructed above floodlines, or reinforcing infrastructures that can withstand stronger storms or certain hazards, or basically having a system that reduce the likelihood or severity of future losses. And with such strategies in place, CDRFI providers such as insurance or multilateral development banks base their pricing on the level of risk that they expect to cover, which basically means lower premium or better contingent credit and such. for certain finance or mechanisms. The key takeaway here is that CDRFI is not a separate after the event instrument. Rather, it can or it should be integrated into every stages of the disaster risk management cycle. That is how we close the financing gap and move from more reactive spending to more of a proactive planning. With that in mind, let's see where our perspective stands. I have a short interactive exercise for you in Mentimeter. And after that, we will get into our main session. I would request everybody to participate in the short Mentimeter session. You can use the QR code that is here, and once you are ready, we can start. You can give a thumbs up. Yeah. Can you see my screen? Okay, so we have the participants joining us already. So first, I would like to start with ranking the 5 phases of integrated disaster risk management cycle in order. So even though it is a continuous loop, it would be great to see how different stages are aligning next to each other. You can use your mouses, or if you are in a phone, you can use it to put it in a rank to see how it would be. So I would give a second or two. Okay. So in general, the ICRM cycle is a loop, so meaning it's a continuous cycle, even though certain stages definitely comes before the other. Okay. So as I also presented before, in the beginning we have the prevention stage, after which we have retention and transfer, and then to the preparedness stage and response and recovery. And with the building back better principle, this again comes in a loop. So that would be how the ICRM cycle works. And the next question I have here, this is not a right or wrong question, but if you have to imagine that your government has allocated 10 million USD for climate and disaster risk finance, in which stage would you prioritize spending it first, to understand where your priorities lie? Okay. Okay, we have some participants who wants to whose view is to have the budget allocated in the preparedness stage. So this is not a right or wrong question, but more about to understand where your priorities lie. Okay. So I see most of us wants to have it in the preparedness stage. If someone is not able to join the Mentimeter already, you can use the code here to get in. Okay. Yeah. So next, going to the third question. I have a question on how would adopting building back better principles approach lower the cost of accessing the CDRFI instruments. You can choose one of the answers that is correct. Okay, so we have most of the participants who chose for the second answer. So the other two answer, the first and third, it's definitely not correct because using principles such as build back better, it helps in reducing future risk and lowering expected losses. Yes, thank you so much for participating in the Mentimeter session. With that in mind, I would like to now start our main session. So we have our first presenter, Alexandra Meath. I would like to give the floor to you. Yes, the floor is yours, Alex.
Thank you so much. Can we go to the next slide, please?
Yeah.
Thanks. So my session will give participants an overview of the key global CDRFI players and their portfolio. I will go into a case example of a global CDRFI initiative, which is the Global Shield Against Climate Risks. Then we will see the process of the Global Shield in Pakistan. We will speak about the CDRFI landscape in Pakistan with key stakeholders, enabling portfolios, regulations, and also look at the key protection gaps in the context of CDRFI. Next slide, please. So this is a snapshot of the global CDRFI landscape. So I want to speak about the key actors that are active within the global landscape. This is a non-exhaustive list, but this gives you an idea of the main actors. So first off, I've listed UN agencies and UN mandated funds. Huge actors in the CDRFI space are the UN Development Program, UN Disaster Risk Reduction, UNEP-FI, which is the UN Environment Program, and FI-PSI stands for the Financing Initiative Principles for Sustainable Insurance. One example of a project that is hosted there is the V20 Sustainable Insurance Facility that provides insurance solutions for small, medium-sized enterprises. Then, of course, we have the UNFCCC for the policy building around CDRFI. We have the World Food Program, for example. FAO could be on the list as well. UN OCHA for the humanitarian or anticipatory action side that is linked to CDRFI. The Santiago Network that provides technical assistance, which is hosted in UNDR and UNOPS. We have the Fund for Responding to Loss and Damage. We have the Green Climate Fund. We also have other adaptation funds and that may support CDRFI elements in bigger projects. Then key players are also the multilateral development banks. In the case of Pakistan, this is, for example, the Asian Development Bank. There's also other regional development banks, of course, and then the Global World Bank and the IMF. Then there are country groupings and initiatives. So we will hear later from Hamza from the Climate Vulnerable Forum, V20 Group of Finance Ministers, V20, and I will dive deeper into the Global Shield Against Climate Risks, which is an initiative that was launched by the V20 and the G7 under Germany's presidency. Then there are donors and bilateral agencies, for example, GIZ, who's part of this project that brings us together today. Also AFD from France, FCDO, those are just a few examples. Then there are humanitarian actors and CSOs, ones on the global side, of course, but then also CSOs in country that are part of CDRFI implementation. Mostly the local CSOs are part of the last mile delivery because they are so connected to the local vulnerable groups that we want to reach, protecting them against climate risks. And then we also have academia, organizations like you and your EHS that support with risk modeling in the climate analytics team, for example. But of course, there's other organizations in academia that support risk modeling and vulnerability assessments, for example, but also support around principle building within CDRFI and research and evidence building, which you will learn in the third webinar, if I'm not mistaken. And then we also have private sector actors, of course, the capital markets that provide the capital for insurance and reinsurance companies. There's also, for example, the Insurance Development Forum, which is a public-private partnership between many insurance companies and UNDP, and funded by some donors, Germany, for example. And then there, of course, are service providers and risk analytics. There are regional risk pools. Unfortunately, there is no regional risk pool available that Pakistan is eligible for, but in other regions in Africa, Southeast Asia, and the Caribbean, there is access to regional risk pools that provide parametric insurance against hazards like droughts or floods and storms. Could we go to the next slide, please? Thanks. So here I have on the left side the institutions again that I just mentioned, and on the right side I have some of the instruments that they support in more detail. So for the UN agencies, they focus a lot on technical assistance or supporting national DRF strategies. Of course, this is generalizing a bit. There are different specializations of each UN agency. Some support with insurance design and pilots. For example, the World Food Programme is really active there as well. We have premium and capital support and blended finance that can be provided by funds. We also have anticipatory action and forecast-based financing, for example, through the UN OCHA side, also World Food Programme projects, and also, of course, the Loss and Damage Fund that could potentially support CDRFI activities. But as you know, this is still under evolution. Yeah, with the MDBs, you have classical products such as contingent credit lines for disasters. You have CAT DDOs. They also support cat bonds, insurance-linked solutions. They advise countries on it. They can support with premium and capital contributions, technical assistance, and all of these activities. Then the CBFV20 and the Global Shield, they, for example, also play a huge role in global advocacy and coordination on CDRFI, because as you can see with all these stakeholders, there's a huge fragmentation, and for countries, it's not always clear-cut and easy on how to access CDRFI institutions that are available on the global stage. For the Global Shield, there are funds that I will go into detail later, and also the types of support it provides. I will also speak on it later. Next slide, please. So the donors and bilateral agencies, they of course come in for grants for technical assistance, pipeline development, market infrastructure development, premium support for insurance products. But this is also, a lot of it is like pilot based, and then countries, the classical donor countries also finance the multilateral development banks, and these funds can be leveraged then for CFI investments. The humanitarian actors and CSOs are really strong, as I mentioned already, forecast-based financing, last mile delivery, and then the private sector again, which I already went a bit into detail earlier, so we can go to the next slide. Thank you, Ujabi.
Yes.
So the Global Shield, this is my case example. So maybe as a context, as I said, the global CDRFI architecture is really fragmented, so it's very difficult for developing countries to access those solutions at scale. So in this context, and also thinking about the huge climate impacts that vulnerable countries are already facing and the huge financing needs there are, the G7 and the B20 decided to launch the Global Shield Against Climate Risks at COP27 in Egypt. So the main objectives of the Global Shield are to enhance and substantially increase financial protection against climate risks, also through increasing global cooperation. They also support inclusive and systematic in-country processes to assess vulnerabilities and close protection gaps in countries. They also have a flexible financing structure to mobilize needs-based technical and financial support for countries, with the aim to provide more systemic, coherent, and sustained approach to financial protection. So the ultimate goal is to have immediately available resources to respond to disasters in the most efficient, effective, and fastest way for economies, businesses, and communities. Next slide, please. This slide gives you an overview of the activities that the Global Shield supports. So on the left, you can see financial instruments like retention funds, as Ujabi explained in the DRM overview. Those are under risk retention, of course, so the cost will be held by national budgets. There's support for credit guarantees, for contingent credits, for financial market instruments like cat bonds, for example. And then, of course, major contribution is parametric and forecast-based finance as well. And then there's premium and capital support, which is donors supporting premiums so that it ensures the affordability in countries. So usually the government of a vulnerable country would then only have to pay very little amount of the premium, and the donors would pay it so they can actually contribute to market building in this, for the insurance markets in developing countries. And then under technical support, we have risk analytics, capacity building around CDRFI. We have support for strengthening regulatory frameworks because in a lot of developing countries, there might be issues on the regulatory side that hinder the uptake of insurance solutions and other CDRFI solutions. Also linking to early warning systems, which are an important part of the overall disaster risk management. And then also strengthening distribution channels to ensure that you can pay out funds to the vulnerable groups at the last mile. And then lastly, also linking to social protection systems and other disbursement mechanisms. Next slide, please. So on this slide, you can see, oops, that was one too far. Please, one back. Yeah, this one, thanks so much. So this slide gives you an overview of the in-country process, which is the heart of the Global Shield process, so to say, where not the magic, but maybe the process, the majority of the work happens. So the in-country process is first of all guided and facilitated by a government focal point. So every country, for example, also in Pakistan, I would explain this to you later. There's a government focal point, and then there's a support structure. This is sometimes can be an institution in country, like an academic institution or a multilateral institution that supports this establishing the process and has local knowledge to also guide the government focal point. And this is, of course, supported by the Global Shield stakeholders, the Global Shield Secretariat and Global Shield Coordination Hub. So the process starts with a preparation. So a country first, of course, has to express their interest in Global Shield support during the Global Shield call. When there's a call for support, countries can apply. And then they have to initiate the in-country process. This starts usually with setting up a series of workshops in country and also consultations. So as you can see on the lower end, you see each circle represents stakeholders that are part of the ICP process. So country representatives, local civil society, but also, of course, global civil society that might implement in the country, local and international private sector, affected and vulnerable groups, and then, of course, the whole global CDRFI actors and humanitarian organizations that I mentioned earlier. So the stock take really looks at then what are the available solutions in country that are already applied? So microinsurance, for example, what is there? Meso insurance. Are there any sovereign products that are already working? Because the Global Shield doesn't want to duplicate what is going on. They want to scale up what is already working and then maybe fill in some of the gaps, right? This leads me to the gap analysis. So based on the stock take and all the inputs that are gained through through these consultations in country, they will then finalize a gap analysis report that makes strategic recommendations of what critical areas could be enhanced to strengthen a country's protection against financial risks. Once the stocktake and gap analysis is completed, it will be also reviewed by a technical advisory group. Oh no, sorry. It will once this is completed, it will be reviewed by the and approved by the government, and this leads to a request for CDRFI support. And this is reviewed by a technical advisory group, also the coordination hub of the Global Shield, which includes implementing partners. And then this request will be submitted to the financing vehicles of the Global Shield, which then develop financial support packages. And these packages will be implemented. In terms of the financing vehicles, we have in the current Global Shield setup three vehicles: the Global Shield Solutions Platform, hosted in Frankfurt School, then the Global Shield Financing Facility hosted in the World Bank, and then also the CVFE20 Joint Multi-Donor Fund that was also included in the graph earlier. To the next slide, please. So this slide gives you an overview of Pakistan's engagement with the Global Shield. So when the Global Shield was launched, actually Pakistan was part of the high-level launch event and was also selected as one of the first beneficiary countries for Global Shield support. So Pakistan has been a front runner. And of course, this was also due to the fact that in 2022, the devastating floods happened. So there was a huge need and call for support for Pakistan. So Pakistan became a beneficiary country in the beginning. Then the preparations of the ICP started. So the Ministry of Climate Change and Environment leads the in-country process and selected UNDP as the country support structure and is locally supported by SDPI and guided by the Global Shield Secretariat. And then the ICP was formally launched in 23 November. And then several consultations followed at federal level, but also consultations with the provinces. So to ensure that also the different voices are heard and the different needs of the complex and different geographic areas that you have and different climate hazards in the different regions are featured in the stocktake and gap analysis. And then the request for support, a draft was presented at COP29. This also shows a little picture on the slide that was at COP29. And this was then submitted to the technical advisory group for review, and then which was finalized in May 2025. And currently, the Global Shield financing vehicles are tailoring a country support package for the government, and it will be presented to them by the end of this month. And it hopes, or with the ambition to address the priority gaps identified in the process. Next slide, please. So now we look at Pakistan's CDRFI landscape in more detail. So first, I'm just giving a very small overview of the key climatic hazards and vulnerabilities, because this is part of course, of a stocktake. But since you are all from Pakistan and you probably are the experts because you face these hazards probably directly. So I'll keep this very short because you will know more than me actually. But of course, the key climatic hazards are riverine floods, droughts, heat wave, landslides, glacial lake outbursts, and floods related to these outbursts. And of course, also other impacts. For example, in the coastal areas, you can have more storms and so on. The affected populations, of course, climate hazards or the effects are widespread, but most affected or the heaviest impact, unfortunately is faced by vulnerable groups. For example, women, children, elderly persons with disabilities, rural communities, mountain communities, for example. And then the most vulnerable economic sectors and public assets are agriculture and livestock, water resources and irrigation. MSMEs are heavily impacted because a lot of the population is employed or working in micro, small, medium-sized enterprises. And then, of course, huge damages to public infrastructure like energy, transport, health, education. Effects can be widespread. And here on the slide, I also included the economic aftermath of the 2022 um, flooding event. So it was estimated that 14.9 billion US dollars in damages were caused, and 15.2 billion US dollars in economic losses, and that the recovery and reconstruction needs were around 16.3 billion. And also, just the effects were so devastating. Like 1/3 of the country was inundated, and 33 million people affected, and 8 million people displaced. So, yeah, this is a lot. This is like, it was so devastating for the economy, and really created a huge gap in the financing available to address climate risks in the future. And then, of course, I'm seeing comments in the chat, there are so many other events, and also the 2025 flooding, and there's currently flooding happening, as I heard. So there's no break, unfortunately, and really emphasizes why we need to have CDRFI at scale. Next slide, please. So now we will look at the key stakeholders in Pakistan's CDRFI landscape. So first off, we have the Ministry of Climate Change and Environmental Coordination. They have a climate finance wing, which is in charge of global climate finance opportunities. So this is also why they were the key stakeholder of the Global Shield process. Then, of course, you have the Ministry of Finance, which is looking at the fiscal implications of climate risk and managing climate funds in country. Then the Ministry of Commerce is responsible for overseeing state-owned insurance companies. We have the State Bank of Pakistan and the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan. For example, the Securities and Exchange Commission of Pakistan, they are like a primary regulatory and supervisory body for the insurance industry in Pakistan, as well as for capital markets and non-banking and pension. So they also released the 2023 strategy, a journey to an insured Pakistan. So insurance and CDRFI solutions gaining more traction within these institutions, which is a positive development. We have the National Disaster Risk Management Fund. That is a government-mandated fund to strengthen resilience against disaster risks. And then social protection is, of course, a huge aspect of this, because social protection programs are like the key to reaching vulnerable groups during disasters, because they have the infrastructure of and payment schemes. So in this context, of course, the Ministry of Poverty Alleviation is an important actor. And for example, also the Benazir Income Support Program, which was like a flagship anti-poverty program. And they have like partner banks throughout Pakistan and like ATMs and agents that can facilitate cash transfers for the poor. And they play a huge role in supporting vulnerable populations affected by disaster, as I mentioned. And then on the provincial and local level, you have also disaster management authorities and district disaster management authorities, and also social protection authorities. So due to the federal system of Pakistan, this creates even more complexity. Yep. And then, of course, others like insurers, reinsurers, CSOs, NGOs. Next slide, please. This gives an overview of the key policies and the enabling environment. So you can see that Pakistan really actively tries to uh, deal with the impacts of climate change, but also disasters. So there are several policies. I will not go into too much detail because also especially on national adaptation planning, Serene will speak later. What I want to highlight is that you can also see a trend that CDRFI is now becoming more anchored in those policies. So just recently, after the global shielding country process was already completed, there was a national disaster risk reduction strategy published, which really anchors CDRFI instruments in a DRF strategy. So this signals a shift to ex-ante tools, and yeah, in this strategy, it highlights MSME protections, the role of public-private partnerships, forecast-based financing, and piloting of cat bonds. And then, of course, you have to look at the insurance legal frameworks. So there are different insurance and inclusion frameworks, insurance rules, takaful rules, which is like Islamic insurance, as you would all know. And then microinsurance rules of 2014, which are noted as very restrictive in practice. And then other financial inclusion strategies, which are important to sort of reach the vulnerable groups that I was mentioning earlier. Next slide, please. So on Pakistan's CDRFI landscape and the role of enabling markets and the market's delivery capacity. So in Pakistan, we actually have the insurance sector includes 42 companies, 28 non-life insurers, 2 takaful operators, 8 life insurers, 3 family takaful operators, and 1 reinsurer, according to the Global Shield Stocktake. Yeah, and although a microinsurance regulatory framework has been in place, there's no officially registered microinsurance product currently available. They are all sort of registered through microfinance banks. So there are still products available. For example, in December 2022, microinsurance and small ticket products covered around 16 million lives in Pakistan. But the main focus of these products is dominated by credit to life products, and there's health products as well. There's very limited disaster and agri products at scale. So there's a huge gap and need for scale up. And yeah, there's of course a growing user base for like internet and mobile banking, which is the main sort of distribution channel for like smaller policies. They are all digitally, or a lot of it is digital. So there are some accessibility constraints through rural connectivity, data privacy security issues, and digital literacy issues that can be addressed through inclusion strategies, as I mentioned earlier. And then there's also the issue with the subnational capacity in finance. So a lot of the provinces, they don't have their own climate-aligned revenues. They're really dependent on federal transfers. So yeah, there's just very few market-based risk transfer users available, and a lot of the risk is held via retention. Next slide, please. So this gives you a bit of an overview of Pakistan's climate risk layering. This graph is a bit older. It's from 2020. I didn't have time to create my own one, but it's still quite accurate in showing the gaps in the current setup. So again, the majority of risks is retained on government books, and there's like only very negligible amounts of disaster risk insurance. I will show you in the next slide the CDRFI products that are implemented. But yeah, in this graph, you can see there's a lot of the risk retained in governments. So you can see budget reallocation and all these on the lower levels of severity. You see a lot of national funds, and that there's a huge gap, that there's no sovereign risk transfer and no contingent credit arrangements. There's like a missed opportunity to transfer some of the risk that Pakistan is facing to the markets. And yeah, especially the lack of coverage for high severity events was really drastic also during the 2022 floods. And then, yeah, maybe we go to the next slide and I can show you. So this is what the Global Shield Stocktake workshops revealed on currently ongoing CDRFI projects in Pakistan. So as you can see, some of it, or most of it, is also addressing flood and drought. A lot of it is on the macro and meso level, but those are all like more small scale. For example, yeah, there's this project strengthening markets for agriculture and rural transformation, which is administered through the Global Index Insurance Facility, but also with World Bank and IBRD funding. This has been going on for a longer time and sort of piloted in the context of agricultural insurance. But yeah, overall, it's a bit scarce. Can we go to the next slide, please? Um, Sorry, could we go to the next slide? Oh, okay. Yeah. So this gives you an overview of CDRFI related projects in Pakistan. So these are not directly CDRFI instruments, but um, other resilience building projects that address flood impacts, glacial lake outbursts and flooding, social protection, address heat waves, and then also general disaster risk reduction, resilience building activities, including early warning projects. This was also counted during the Global Shield stocktake and gap analysis. So you can see there are some encompassing projects ongoing around the disaster risk management cycle that Javi presented earlier. So to note that CDRFI is like one part of the toolbox, but of course cannot cover all the gaps and yeah, support needs of a country. Next slide, please. So this slide gives you a summary of the key CDRFI gaps in Pakistan. So of course there's a huge protection gap, and a lot of the dealing with climate risks is reliant on budgets and relief, also borrowing after disasters, which of course has a drastic impact on the country's debt sustainability. So a lot of the disaster funds that you saw in the risk layering overview, they are undercapitalized because there's just not enough money. Also, you've seen the devastating impacts that climate risks had. So the countries that they cannot like win this race against climate change, they don't have enough domestic resources. And also, as we can see on the supply side gaps, we have a lot of underfunding, shrinking development finance. So it's really, really a big issue on the funding side. We have institutional coordination gaps. So, of course, Pakistan is a large country, a federal country. So there are a lot of institutions involved. So naturally, coordination is super important, and this could be strengthened within Pakistan to really improve disaster risk management strategies and CDRFI policy making. Then on risk analytics and triggers, there's insufficient local models for key hazards. For example, there's no local drought model that I could find. Maybe you know better than me, but yeah, there's a lot of global models, but not yeah, there's some key modeling missing that is the basis for insurance product and trigger development. And then on the gender and inclusion side, there's of course, yeah, an inclusion issue, barriers for women, vulnerable groups in rural areas, and the financial tools are not targeted, but also in assessments of the effectiveness, a lot of it is not gender disaggregated, so we don't know the impacts on different social groups. And then key gaps in market and delivery. So in the insurance market and regulation, there's like a restrictive microinsurance regime, which also limits the local microinsurance industry. A lot of the existing microinsurance that I mentioned is sort of administered through multinational organizations or through uh, microinsurance. No, uh, yeah, like I think other development financing institutions that are like globally and regionally. So not so much is locally. Like there's not a huge local market there. So there's a product distribution gaps. There's also a big demand and trust issue. So there's low awareness in some communities. There might be religious concerns on insurance, as it's not, in line with some Sharia considerations. Then there's distribution uh, channel constraints, national capacity constraints, and the supply side gaps, which I mentioned. So there's a lot of emphasis on technical assistance and not enough capital and premium support and what a lot of us call pilotitis. So there's a lot of pilots, but then there's not enough money to in the end scale them up or make them sustainable, which is a big issue. And I also see a comment that misallocations of funds and disaster fund management is an issue as well. Yeah, this makes sense as well. Thank you for adding this crucial point. Next slide, please. So having heard all this and all these gaps that are identified in the Global Shield process, but also my sources are also other World Bank documents and reports and so on, but they sort of agree on the major gaps. So in as part of the Global Shield process, Pakistan submitted a request for support to the Global Shield. So I can only give you a high-level overview. This is not officially published yet, but the high-level overview is, we can communicate this. So there are 5 areas that sort of transpired in the process. So the first area is sovereign risk finance and transfer. So Pakistan wishes to establish a comprehensive risk layered strategy to enhance Pakistan's resilience and ensure timely and predictable provision of financial resources in the when disasters strike. Tools they requested are anticipatory action funds, cat bonds, first the feasibility, but also the funding. So a cat bond, for example, would have been really a good instrument for the for like the flood that happened because they cover the high impact, low frequency spectrum of CDRFI, which you may know, and of course then other parametric insurance solutions. Area 2 is agriculture, so enhancing the resilience of agricultural communities, especially smallholders, because a lot of the products there, they are just for, it's not widespread, they're not at scale, and a lot of the products are just for loan holders and not just general single standing solutions. So the tool support requested here is weather index insurance expansion and area yield index insurance, for example. Then area 3 is public assets. So they want to strengthen the resilience of critical public infrastructure, public asset insurance, also technical support for resilient design standards, and community-based infrastructure insurance. So in times of disaster, you can make sure that education facilities or hospitals or other institutions are covered, especially because if you invest a lot of money into these projects and then a disaster hits, you need to borrow more money to continue these projects, which is, again, devastating for the financial planning and the budgets of a country. Next slide, please. So these are the two other areas. One is livelihood protection. For example, conditional cash transfers, microinsurance programs, responding to federal but also province level. This is the linking of CDRFI and adaptive social protection, which makes a lot of sense in Pakistan because Pakistan already has a really built out system or good structure, good distribution channels on the social protection side that could be leveraged to scale up CDRFI solutions. And then lastly, risk analytics. As I mentioned, some of the key insights and analysis and multi-hazard and vulnerability risk assessments are missing. So this is something that Pakistan also requested, including geospatial monitoring, satellite data integration, and policy framework supports and institutional capacity support. So as a next step, this support request is currently with the Global Shield financing vehicles. And just as a disclaimer, the request does not automatically mean that the GS will fund all of the requested support. So this is also with the funding boards of the financing vehicles. And then there's also, of course, the aim of Global Shield Secretariat to be a matchmaker and to also facilitate funding from the global CDRFI actors. And yeah, with that, I'm handing over to my colleague Hamza Haroon from the CVFE 20 Secretariat. Or are there question Q&A first? Ujabi, let me know.
Yeah, thank you so much, Alex, for your presentation. If there are any questions, participants can post it in the chat. We will monitor your chats, and if there is something our presenters can already answer, we will answer, but we have a dedicated Q&A session at the end as well for detailed discussion. Yeah, thank you so much, Alex. Then I will give the floor to Hamza. Thank you so much for joining us. Yes, the floor is yours. Should I let you share your screen?
Yes, please. That would be great. Thank you.
Yes, so I can stop sharing my screen. Yeah, could you share your screen now? Yeah, perfect.
Hello, can you guys hear me? Oh, great. Perfect, perfect, perfect. Thank you so much. I'm just going to put this on slide mode so we can go through the conversations and continue to share. All right. Well, thank you so much for having me. Big thanks to the organizers. Really, really interesting conversation. Learned a lot from Alex's presentation as well. So thank you so much, Alex, for doing that. What I want to do is I want to just make some few comments on insurance in general in Pakistan. And then I will love to go into the work that the CVFV 20 is doing in Pakistan when it comes to climate prosperity plans. How are we incorporating CDRFI? Insurance is one of those things, is that unless you have faith in the insurance circle, in the model, it wouldn't really work. One of the things that I have noticed in Pakistan and having lived abroad as well is that if you get into a car accident in, let's say, in any developed country, you have faith in the insurance that the insurance will take care of things. Similarly, it's, if you get it, if a disaster hits in some of these developed countries, you have faith in the insurance that the insurance will help, the disaster relief will come, the timelines will be quicker. in some of our developing countries, the faith is still not there. And one of the things that we are working on with different sort of partners, including the CPP, is to how do we build that faith? Faith is also one of the reasons why Pakistan has the lowest insurance in the world, I would say. I think it's around 0.9% of GDP or 1% of GDP is covered. So this is something very, very important. That's the first comment I wanted to make. The second point is insurance should be embedded in the society as a new normal as we proceed into a lot of episodic climatic events that are happening in countries like Pakistan, Nepal, Bangladesh, Bhutan. That is another thing that needs to happen in our societies very fast. Agriculture, for example, needs to embed this as a new norm that, we need to have insurance across all provinces, not just one. So that's another thing that I want to, mention. And then the third piece is that the uh, CDRFI and the aid that comes or the reaction that happens post disaster needs to be fast. One of the things that we bring up a lot is that the relief comes 18 to 36 months later. That's not okay anymore. And that puts countries like Pakistan in this continuous, debt cycle, climate debt trap, essentially, that, it takes so long to recover. If you look at the 2022 floods, it has taken Pakistan very long to recover. And one of the reasons why is because the relief comes very, very slow. So just wanted to point out these three things as well as we're working on climate prosperity plans. All right, so just want to give you a brief overview of who we are. CBFB20 is an intergovernmental agency of 74 countries. Previous chairs were Bangladesh, Ghana, and Barbados. On the top left, you can see Prime Minister Mia Mottley. She's our chair, and with her is our Secretary General, President Nasheed. He's the former president of Maldives. So Pakistan is also one of the member countries. Just want to showcase our global advocacy is extremely strong when it comes to international financial architecture. We have held meetings across many, many important international events, which include World Bank annuals, Springs, FIX, FFD4, COPs, and all these other places where a lot of these important architecture conversations are taking place. So this is something that will benefit as changes happen, developing countries, global South countries like Pakistan. Before I set the scene for the CPPs, I wanted to tell you, I wanted to ask some of you, what do you think is climate vulnerability? What are your notions of climate? When I say, or when anyone says, when Alex says climate vulnerability, what do you guys think of? Just wanted, if you guys can put something in the chat box, that'll be great. Just wanted to understand what your thoughts on this. And I can't see the chats for some reason, so if someone can help me on what they're seeing, that'll be great.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you so much. If someone has some definition of climate vulnerability, you can post it in the chat and I can help translate it from chat to the speaker because I think Hamza cannot see the chat at the moment.
We try again. Oh, wait, I can
We
see the
had
chat.
someone who says fragility.
Fragility. That's very interesting. Yeah. Yeah.
Lack of
Brilliant. Brilliant. Brilliant.
capacity.
That's, yeah.
Yeah, lack of
Right.
capacity to understanding, prepare, and respond to climate-related hazards. It also means how people, animal, or place at risk from harmful effect of climate change. We have a lot of answers coming up.
That's great. That's great. Well, that's good. I'm glad you guys are, very much on point. So I'll just continue. So let me tell you a quick story. My dad was in the Navy. So a lot of these things start making sense to me when I think of, because I grew up hearing about his stories. And the way I put it is, imagine you're on the sea and you have a bunch of ships or boats. Let's say boats. You have a bunch of boats that are on the sea. And all of a sudden, there's a storm that comes through. What we will very quickly notice is that the smaller boats will have a very difficult time getting back to their course compared to the bigger boats, the stronger boats, because they have the capacity, and that was the word someone used in the chat as well. They have the capacity to weather those storms and to essentially keep on moving forward. That is the biggest thing that we need to understand. Our countries lack that fundamental capacity amongst so many different strains, which cause us to lose that resilience, lose that chart that we, the course that we charted. So it is important to understand that it is the capacity when it comes to disproportionate impacts, economic strain, the lack of capacity when it comes to technology access, interrupted recoveries, and systemic barriers. So this is one of the reasons why I set the scene of understanding really what is happening with our countries. And then the next thing that I want to talk to you about is, with that lack of capacity, what we're doing over time is we're increasing debt stock over time. So this is a graph of our V20 countries, and we plotted the level of debt over time, and you see that it's going up. But it's not only that. The most interesting piece that I really want to stress is the flow of capital is going the other way around. So if you look at this graph, there's a report that came out which said that there's a 60 in 2023, there was a $68 billion increase of private interest payments and principal payments that was flowing out of developing countries into developed countries, and the inflow was only $40 billion, out of which only 2 billion was concessional. Concessional basically means that the rate of your interest, the rate of your loan is lower than your medium-term, long-term growth rate. So that is more sustainable debt than the non-concessional. So if you look at this ratio, it's 1 to 100. So you're getting only 2 billion that's concessional, and you're losing 200 billion that's leaving our countries. So that's something to also understand. But that's not it. The story continues, because we also face a high cost of capital. If you're trying to build a green manufacturing unit in Pakistan or Maldives or in Bangladesh, your cost of capital will be higher than Spain or other countries, which is also then a barrier to not just development outcomes, but to climate outcomes. So that's the third factor that comes in. And the fourth one, and I was having a conversation, we're in Balochistan right now, me and my team, and we were having a conversation with one of the government officials, and we were trying to explain to them that, look, this sort of need to continuously get grants is going to have to stop, because what we're seeing in the global landscape is that ODA is shrinking. You have governments that are dedicating a lot of their budgets into other sectors. So in the future, you will be in a situation where these budget cuts will then limit the level of grant that is available. And I think a lot of countries are already facing that, including Pakistan. A lot of non-profits, a lot of multilaterals are, optimizing their projects that they were working on in some of our countries. And I think we're all seeing that. So not only do we have high debt, not only do we have high cost of capital, we also have a shrinking ODA budget. But then you would ask me, Hamza, what happened? We can go to all these amazing forums and tell them about this. But the problem is that our voice and representation is also very low. If you look at the vulnerable 20 countries, and at that time, when we did this research, we had 70 countries. If you look at the quotas and voting power in the IMF system and the MDB system, it is eye-opening for many of us. That is the voice and representation we have while we suffer huge climatic events like the 2022 floods. Even the floods happening right now, they have, it will take us years to get out to be where we were before these events that happened in last week and the week before. And our voice is very limited. So, the point of telling you all was setting basically the scene of what needs to happen as we face all these challenges. One of the things that we work on, apart from the global advocacy piece that Alex also touched on, is creating climate prosperity plans. And that is the work we're doing in not just Pakistan. We've done this in Bangladesh, we've done this in Sri Lanka. My team is doing that in Bhutan. We're hopeful that in other South Asia countries, we will also be doing this. We've done this in Ghana as well. We've done this in Barbados as well. Climate prosperity plans in simple language, and not going to go over all this slide. I'm sure you can read through it. I'm just going to give you the crux. Think of CPPs as national investment strategies. If someone came to the table and said, I have $150 billion that I want to spend in Pakistan, Bangladesh, or Bhutan, I bet you that all of our, leaders will be looking at multilateral organizations to tell them where to focus on. Because no one has proper programmatic whole of government planning on what sectors are important for us to focus on as we move towards 2030, 2035, 2050. There are plans, but there are no projects behind them. They lack targets, they lack the macroeconomic modeling. So what we have done is we figured out a way on creating these climate prosperity plans so we can find those projects, we can have targets, and we can create right rules and regulations that create the enabling market for us, for our countries to move from climate vulnerability towards climate prosperity. What we've also uncovered is that the flows that are coming right now in the recent months, we need 5 times more of that to reach to the levels where we need to reach. And that is what I've told you, that we've already worked on some of these climate prosperity plans, and the ones on the bottom are the ones that we are working on as we go forward. But that's not it. In our countries, it's important to create the right implementation model, because all my life I've seen that we have amazing plans, but when it comes to implementation, we kind of we don't have that plan. But for CPP, what we're doing in Pakistan is, when we say we create a Pakistan Climate Prosperity Plan, we're also asking them that we need to create a country platform that is the delivery vehicle that implements that climate prosperity plan, that brings together the whole of government programmatic approach, not the fly in, fly out model, not a model of, okay, let's focus on energy for 3 months and then let's go to agriculture in the fourth month. We need to have a programmatic view of where we need to go, and we need inclusiveness. We need private sector engagement. We need academia's engagement. We need the provinces to be engaged. We need stakeholders to be in the decision making, so that it's a whole of government approach. I'm going to stop and see if there's any questions on the chat. Yeah. Okay. Yep. Okay, cool. I'll just move forward. Just a quick sneak peek. We're going to launch the CPP very soon. The CPP, of course, is a document from the Finance Ministry of Pakistan. Some of the areas that we've uncovered that are going to be important for us in the future, are on your screen. One of the ones that I want to speak about is, and Alex spoke about it. I think she went into great amount of detail. Is the access to financial protection mechanisms, within which we have CDRFI elements covered. And Alex actually has put some of the thoughts that she mentioned to you in the document as well. This is a very quick overview of some of the statistics that you already know. Insurance industry in Pakistan is less than 1%. There's a lack of sovereign catastrophe cover. Less than 10% of farmers have crop insurance. I was speaking to one of the provincial representatives the other day, and they were saying, one of the provinces said, Hamza, we had crop insurance, but for 4 years, no disaster happened. So, because nothing happened, now we have to figure out how we keep this, protection for the next couple of years. But this is why I was telling you, this needs to be embedded in the society, because, we have seen that the floods, the droughts, the heat waves, the droughts, they're becoming new normal for countries like Pakistan. And if you want to be climate resilient, if you want to continue to be on the path, the course that you've set, you need to have those resiliency factored in through CDRFI. So those are some of the things that are also covered in the CPP. I feel Alex has done a really good job with Global Shield, so I'm not going to go into too much detail, but I do agree with what you guys were discussing in the beginning, that being prepared is what matters the most. Because if we're not prepared, if we continue to be reactive, the things will be even more difficult for us in Pakistan than they currently are. And I think the likes of Global Shield is an important stepping stone to where we need to go. I do not think Global Shield alone is the answer. I think a sustainable path forward, which has the elements of Global Shield embedded in the federal, embedded in the provincial, embedded in the local governance model, is what Pakistan needs. Because unless we don't empower our local governments to have these sort of tools available to them, we will always have gaps. That's the one thing that I've been very clear, and I think the CPP will also speak about that. So with that, I'll thank you all for your time, for your patience in listening. And let me know, and Alex know, if you have any questions. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much for your presentation. Before we move ahead, I would like to request the participants to turn on their camera. We would like to take a picture. If you have any objection, then it's okay when your camera is turned off. But if you could quickly turn on your camera so that we can know our audience a bit more. Okay. I think we have everybody. Do we have the picture already, Connor?
Yes. Yep. We sure do.
Okay. Thank you so much. Moving on, we have our next presenter, Serene. She would be presenting on integrating CDRFI, integrating and aligning CDRFI into national policies and initiatives. I will quickly share my screen. Can you see my screen?
Yes.
Thank you, Serene. The floor is yours.
Thank you, Javi, and thank you everyone for continue joining this session. And for the second part of this session, I will guide you through how to integrate and align CDRFI into national climate policies. So this is to contextualize broader policy processes, as Alex and Hamza went through some specific projects under Global Shield and Global Shield in-country processes, and also the Pakistan's a bit overview of what Pakistan is facing and what are the challenges the country is going through. So here I just want to zoom out a bit and then introduce you more national policy and how can this be linked to CDRFI. Next slide, please. So this session, I will cover a brief overview of climate policy landscape, mainly about a National Adaptation Plan and nationally determined contributions. And then I will briefly introduce the current status of CDRFI integration in NAPs and NDCs in a global level. And then lastly, I will show you how the country can actually integrate CDRFI into their national adaptation plans. Next slide, please. And the next slide, please. Thank you. I believe that most participants are aware about this context, but let me just reiterate the basic definition about NAPs. So National Adaptation Plans is a process which is a strategic process that enables the countries to identify and also address their medium and long-term adaptation activities. So the main objectives are reducing vulnerability and impact of the climate change, and also to facilitate the integration of adaptation activities in more coherent manner with relevant stakeholders and participants. Next slide, please. And nationally determined contributions or climate action plans of each country under the Paris Agreement. So it includes both mitigation and adaptation activities. And the main objective of NDCs is to outline how to reduce greenhouse gas emissions below 1.5 degrees, and also how to adapt to climate impacts and ensure sufficient finance. Next slide, please. So just to reiterate the main topic and objective of my session, I just want to highlight why we actually have to integrate the CDRFI elements into climate policies. I think some of the participants are already aware of it. I can see one, I could see one relevant questions in the chat as well. So here are the main benefits on how and why we have to integrate this into NDCs and NAPs. So firstly, NAPs and LDCs, especially NAPs, are about climate change adaptation and resilience building. So it could be also be phrased into the country's risk profile and vulnerability assessment. So in that sense, CDRFI can be a very essential tool. And secondly, there are many technical tools which are embedded in CDRFI, which can be climate risk assessment, vulnerability assessment, or risk modeling. And by learning and developing the fundamental of these tools, the country can actually enhance their technical capacity. And thirdly, here I want to highlight that CDRFI should and cannot function alone, but it needs to be integrated into a broader context of other strategies and national plans. And also it needs to be worked in synergy with other strategies and plans, such as disaster risk management plans or national response plans. And this will ensure the country to have more effective tool and effective implementation of their national climate policies. And lastly, it is important to make finance and implementation more actionable, because it is already described in Alex's presentation. You already saw the risk mapping, risk layering content of Pakistan. As you can see here, it shows what kind of elements can cover some level of risks of the country. So by making the adaptation planning more science-based and more strategic, it makes investment and climate policy more actionable. And last but not least, I want to highlight that we need more private sector engagement in adaptation, and this can be enhanced by CDRFI, such as insurance industry, by embedding this in activity into national plans. More private sector are willing to invest in and have more investment confidence in CDRFI elements. Next slide, please. So here we want to show some integration status of NAPs and NDCs. And next slide, please. So this is based on the submitted National Adaptation Plans and NDCs, and we, in collaboration with UNDP, reviewed the submitted NAPs and how they elaborated or how they explain CDRFI elements in those climate policies. So first, let's look at the key trend and action items in NAPs. So risk transfer and insurance are the most frequently mentioned instruments, and it focused on how to introduce them and how to scale up those existing schemes. and 10 countries use CDRFI to enhance adaptation efforts specifically. And lastly, comprehensive risk management and CDRFI role can play a critical role in risk reduction, which are already mentioned a couple of times in the previous presentation. And as you can see in the left bottom side, there's a figure. And as you can see, insurance is mentioned 43 times among submitted NAPs, which is a huge amount of number. And on the right side table, this is the level of CDRFI integration, and we categorized based on how many times CDRFI instruments are mentioned, and also we consider some quantitative and also qualitative factors. And Pakistan is categorized in medium, and there are some developed or advanced countries which mentioned and identify many CDRFI elements such as Bangladesh and Colombia. And next slide, please. And there are some key trends and action items of CDRFI in NDCs. So 77 countries incorporated CDRFI at least one of the NDCs because some NDCs were updated, and 69 countries included in their latest NDC. And CDRFI is mainly featured in adaptation, finance, and loss and damage sections. And CDRFI and mitigation were linked in renewable energy and building sectors. For instance, to increase the resilience of the energy infrastructure, we can consider infrastructure insurance or something like that. And here as well, insurance was the most often named instrument, which is mentioned 65 times, and 70 countries included contingency funds. And on the right graphic, this is the number of segments in NDCs, of the number of the CDRFI elements in NDCs. And I will not go through the details, and we can move on to the next slide. And here is the general overview of Pakistan's NAPs, specifically focusing on CDRFI elements. So CDRFI elements are highlighted in Pakistan's NAP, particularly in agriculture, disaster risk management, and financing sector. So in agriculture sector, Pakistan NAP mentioned develop like a risk management system, which includes crop insurance. And in disaster risk management chapter or part, they included climate and disaster risk finance and insurance products again, but specifically focusing on most vulnerable and marginalized communities. And also it highlighted how to building back better of the country by enhancing disaster preparedness. I think preparedness is something the country is actually interested in and keen into. At the very beginning of the Mentimeter survey, I could also see participants highlighted the importance of preparedness. And lastly, in financing sector, they highlighted the partnership with insurance industries and also engineering firms to enhance their technical capacity and also enabling environment. Next slide, please. So here I just want to introduce then how the country can actually integrate CDRFI into NAPs or NDCs. I just want to refer to this slide. I think you already encountered this graphic before, but there are many entry points for CDRFI in National Adaptation Plans, and it doesn't necessarily have to be the very beginning of the NAP formulation stage, but you can actually tailor into based on the country's needs and the country's process. It can be in the planning stage, as you can see in the blue part of the chart, or implementation stage by establishing system for CDRFI at different levels, or it can also be in monitoring and evaluation stage. So In the next slide, I will give you an overview and summary of how each step contains which activities. Next slide, please. So as I mentioned, CDRFI can be integrated throughout the NAP process. So it covers from groundwork to planning to implementation and monitoring. I will not go through each small steps, but as you can see here, this is the roadmap that MCII developed with UNDP, and this shows a practical step-by-step guideline how the country can actually develop or integrate or align their CDRFI element into NAP. And we have 4 main steps: groundwork, preparation, which is formulation of NAP, and implementation of NAP, and report, monitoring, and review. And lastly, we also have cross-cutting activities, which can be applied to every step of this process of NAP. And next slide, please. So for the first step, to lay the groundwork and address gap, this stage focus on establishing institutional and legal framework, so it ensures more coordinated planning in terms of adaptation. So it makes the country to build more institutional framework and also conduct some gap analysis and stock take so that the countries can actually identify what activities or what are the entry points from the country. Next slide, please. And in the preparation steps, which is formulation of NAPs, it focuses on developing and finalizing the National Adaptation Plans. So in terms of CDRFI application, it helps the country to better understand the climate risks and vulnerabilities by utilizing the CDRFI tools or modeling. So as you can see, there are 7 steps, but in a nutshell, it involves identifying and prioritize key sectors and regions, and also communities that are most vulnerable to climate impacts. Next slide, please. And for step C, I think this is the most critical and relevant step for Pakistan, because Pakistan already have NAPs, but the most important part is how to put the plan into actions. So this section shows how to turn National Adaptation Plan into specific CDRFI activities. So it includes identifying key stakeholders and define the most effective and appropriate modalities, and also aligning with other national policies. And most importantly, it is really important to attract public and private finance. So this chapter is focusing on how to actually develop actionable and implementable funding or project proposal and then submit to relevant climate funds or potential donors. Next slide, please. And for the reporting, monitoring, and review phase, it is about tracking the progress and also effectiveness of their National Adaptation Plan, and also update based on the review, and then even enhance the NAP further. Next slide, please. And here are the cross-cutting activities. This is focusing on to create the right conditions to integrate CDRFI into NAP across all the phases. So as I mentioned, it includes strengthening and also enable environments. And secondly, it builds CDRFI capacity across within sectors and institutions. And lastly, it is also important to consult and engage with diverse stakeholders. Next slide, please. I just very, very quickly go through each step of the integrating the CDRFI into their NAPs. But if you want to look at the more detailed actions and activities and who are the stakeholders that the country have to reach out to, then you can go to this link and there are some documents, and we are happy to answer more questions or collaborate further regarding this topic. I will stop here.
Thank you so much, Serene, for your presentation. Next, I would like to again have a short Mentimeter round to recap what we just talked about during the presentations, and soon after that we will address some of the questions that have been posted in the chat and open the floor for detailed discussion with the participants. So if you could join the link and give me a thumbs up, we can begin the session for Mentimeter. Okay. I am not so sure if someone has joined. I would move to the question. Is everybody able to join the Mentimeter through the QR code that's provided here? Okay, maybe I would just stop. Yeah, so let me begin with the first question. I think it's my okay. Sorry, I would share the screen again. It froze for a moment. Yeah. Okay, so let me begin with the first question. So my first question is the integration of CDRFI into NAPs and NDCs primarily help countries. So I have like three statements here. If you agree with certain statement or disagree with certain statement, you can look into it, and we have some answers. Okay. So here more than one answer could be correct, or only one answer could be correct. So we have more or less answers from some participants. So integrating CDRFI into NAPs and NDCs primarily help countries to secure international support and finance, and also strengthen resilience by linking adaptation and risk finance. However, it does not reduce the frequency of disasters, as these are more linked with climatic pattern or vulnerabilities. Next, we have what could be barrier to integrating CDRFI into national policies and plans in Pakistan. If not Pakistan, we also have, I think, some participants who is not from Pakistan. You can also include some of the barriers, which could be funding, technical capacities, awareness. You can just type anything you would like to, or you think is a barrier in integrating CDRFI. Okay. Maybe I could move into, I'm not so sure if we are still there. We have finance, technical capacities, financial constraint, awareness. So these are some factors. fragmentation, fund optimization. Yeah, so there could be more than one barriers. It could be related with technical capacity or funding constraints and such. Next, I would do one final Mentimeter round since we do not have much time. So which of the following does not accurately describe a national adaptation plan? Is it a continuous, NAP is a continuous and evolving process that integrates adaptation into national decision making. It is a set of adaptation projects to be implemented by the government. Yeah, strategic framework that considers the whole economy and long-term resilience, or roadmap that brings together all actors and sectors and level of governance. So one answer is incorrect and the three are correct. Just to clarify that. Okay, we have different answers. Just to provide a final answer, so NAP is here not a set of adaptation projects. It's a continuous process, continuous and evolving process that requires strategic frameworks and also bring together all sectors and levels of governance. Okay. Thank you so much for participating in the Mentimeter. Next, I would like to give the floor to the participants and the speakers, and you can answer any questions from the chat, and if any of the participants want to have a specific discussion with the speakers, you can raise your hand and the floor would be yours. Yeah, so should we start? First, maybe from the participants, if you have any questions that you would like to ask to the speakers, you can raise your hand maybe. Okay, then I can address some of the questions that we had in the chat, and one of our speaker can answer the questions as well. First, Alex or Sirin, would you like to answer any of the questions that our participants has? Yeah, I can see Alex might.
Yeah. Thanks. So there's a question that was directed to me from Amber Rafi. Question is, could you please explain what financial instruments currently form the backbone of Pakistan's disaster risk financing strategy and how effective have they been in providing timely post-disaster liquidity? Thank you for this excellent question. So in the overview that I shared earlier, the CDRFI landscape in Pakistan is still small scale. There's a lot of the projects that I've been speaking about have been pretty much pilots or limited in coverage of people and also limited in terms of their time of implementation. So there is a huge gap in terms of employing CDRFI in Pakistan's overarching disaster risk management strategy. So there is a huge opportunity to scale up there. A lot of the impact of climate risks and the costs associated have been paid by government budgets. There's budget reallocation, for example, that budgets that were planned for other projects moved to then disaster response. So this is an issue, of course, because CDRFI can be more cost efficient. Then we have a big issue of post-disaster borrowing. So this means, especially if you're a country that is very vulnerable to climate change, you have a higher cost of capital. So you have a lot of debt in return of a disaster. So this is also not a good strategy. So the goal would be to scale up those pilots and activities that have been tested already and that worked, so that you can extend the beneficiary base of those projects. So that would be good to provide timely post-disaster liquidity. I hope that answers the question.
Yes, thank you, Alex. I can see the message from Amber Rafi. Thank you so much for your participation. If there are more questions from the participants that they directly want to ask to our speakers. Yeah, I see a hand raise from Muhammad Qasim Ali. Yes.
Well, can you guys hear me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Yeah, okay, great. So I just want to know, like in Germany, there's a new government in place, and I'm sure they must be shaping its climate and development agenda. I have a question with Alex, like how do you see the global shield evolving? I mean, what priority areas might guide its support to vulnerable countries like Pakistan?
Thanks so much for this very good question. So in terms of the involvement of the Global Shield, do you mean in Pakistan, or like in to extend the support to other countries, or the next steps within Pakistan, or
In general, like with the new government, I'm sure
yeah.
they must have some budget
Oh, okay.
allocations, how they want to continue this kind of work specifically.
Yeah.
I'm sure with the new government, there's new priorities in place, and how these priorities are evolving
Okay.
this global shield. And then if you can also slightly touch base upon how Pakistan and countries like us can take benefit out of it in the long run. Yeah.
Okay, I got you. Okay, so actually the Global Shield is not only a German initiative, so it's a multi-donor initiative. So other donors, also France, then there's Denmark, Benelux states, then we have support from Japan, we had support from Canada, we had support from Ireland. I hope I'm not missing anyone, FCDO. So there's a
G7,
couple
yeah.
of donors. Nevertheless, you are right. There's a new government in Germany, but also with a lot of European governments, there's a funding constraints coming up. There's a reduction in development finance overall. So this is also felt a bit in the CDRFI space. Nevertheless, we hope that there is a renewal commitment. So there's always around the climate conference, there is more contributions to the Global Shield financing vehicles. So to say, the pot of money that we can then deploy in countries. So it all depends, of course, on the money. If we have more money, we can implement bigger packages, or the Global Shield Secretariat and its partners can implement bigger packages. So what helps is there is a clear demand from climate vulnerable countries. And I think Pakistan is really doing a great job on this aspect, because they go to the climate conferences. They are really vocal right now about the support needs that they have, and also really adapting the strategies to it, because then it also gets easier for donors to see, okay, there's a huge demand for it. They have good strategies in place, so they can take this up. So I think this is something that countries can do. Also, the joint advocacy that Hamza mentioned through the V20 and CVF, I think this plays a huge role to signaling there is demand. We need the support, and then also to get donors to contribute more. And I hope this answers your question.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank
Yeah,
you.
thank you both, Alex and Mohammed Qasim. I have next question from Salva Said. Yes, please. Would you like to unmute your mic and?
Thank you so much for such an insightful session today. It was really good, and especially Pakistan is one of those countries that is barely affected by the effect of climate change. The recent floods is an example. I would like to ask from Hamza Harun, if he's there, that is there any working on a centralized policy framework, because to lessen the gaps between the public sector, the federation, the provinces, so as to mitigate the climate risks to a broad spectrum, as well as to develop a centralized national policy, and also to institutionalize it in a better way and to implement and ensure the sustainability of those policies and optimization of funds and to get the better results and preventions of such hazards in future. Thank you so much.
Yeah, thank you so much for your question, but I understood you wanted to ask the question to Hamza, or?
Anybody else, anyone from the panel, they can have, actually he was on this policy side, that's why I would like to ask from any other.
Yeah, if Alex or Serene has any insights
Yes,
on
yes,
that.
Alex, you can better.
Yeah, unfortunately, Hamza had to leave the meeting. I know that, I mean, in terms of the climate prosperity plans, if you have these big plans where you have multi-stakeholder consultations on different levels, I think these they lead to some form of better coordination because then you invite all the stakeholders to the table and it can help with integrating these different levels more. I don't know personally if there is really direct attempts to updating those frameworks that you mentioned. So maybe you could also reach out to Hamza personally if you want to discuss more. He dropped his email in the link. But overall, I think those initiatives also like the Global Shield because they bring together all these stakeholders in country. I think they support these efforts. And then there was another question on the chat where the Global Shield is based in Pakistan or Germany. To clarify, so the Global Shield Secretariat is actually hosted in Germany, but yeah, with different global colleagues from everywhere. But the in-country implementation works with, we have a lead ministry and they are supported by a local organization which is hired to support the process. This can be, for example, in Pakistan, this was UNDP and another institute in Pakistan to support the process. In other countries, this can be different organizations, so they support facilitating the process. And then actually the CVFE 20 has a regional office in Pakistan where Hamza Haroon, he's based in Pakistan. He also has a colleague in his office. So if you want to connect with Hamza in Pakistan, I think this is also an opportunity.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much for your answer. I'm
Thank you.
obliged.
Thank you both. We have time for one another last question from Jonathan Batang. I'm sorry if I'm spelling your
That's
pronouncing
fine.
your name incorrectly.
Yeah. Thank you very much. I'm Jonathan from the Philippines. Very insightful presentation from our panelists. I'd like to know what has been the intervention in the Asia Pacific countries. We know for a fact that Asia Pacific is now the most vulnerable region in the world. But I'd like to know the form of support that the Global Shield has implemented in any of the countries where the Global Shield is involved, maybe in the form of technical assistance, funds for premium subsidies, etc. Please clarify. Thank you.
I think this also goes to me. Thanks, Jonathan, for the question. So actually, the Global Shield is also active in Asia Pacific and other countries, but Pakistan is one of the first and most advanced in the process. So as of now, the implementation of the actual solution has not yet happened in Asia Pacific countries, but there's an ongoing process in Bangladesh. There is an ongoing process also in the Philippines. Maybe you've heard there was a workshop just concluded in August. We have in the Pacific Islands, in Fiji, Republic of Marshall Islands, and Samoa and Tonga, there were consultations held. So for Fiji, there is an expected implementation starting by the end of this year. And also for the other countries, Bangladesh and Philippines, we expect the request for support, where these support areas that I presented for Pakistan, they will also materialize in these other countries. So for now, I cannot yet say what will be supported because these requests have not yet transpired, unfortunately.
All right. Thank you very much, Alex.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you all for joining, and thank you so much for speakers for your time and the insightful sessions. I just have one last request. If you all could do a short survey. It's just a couple of questions to help us understand what is needed for upcoming sessions. I will also, you can use the QR code here, or I will post the link in the chat, and you can also give us feedback through the link that's posted. With that note, thank you so much, everybody, for joining us, and we look forward to hearing from you and for our future sessions. Thank you so much, and I wish you a very good day ahead.
Thank you all for joining.
Thank you very